Welcome. This is Lori Stansel. I am an international speaker, a best-selling published author and expert life strategist, a Christian entrepreneur, and minister. So we're going to be talking about the topic of stretching. I mean, why do we need to be stretched? What are the benefits of being stretched? I'm not talking about stretching your muscles. I'm talking about being stretched inwardly as a person, as an individual, in your character, in your morality, in your ethics, and spiritually. So that's what I'm talking about. Now, I would ask the question, has anyone ever been stretched? But that's a silly question. What I am going to ask you is, are you being stretched right now? So I want to talk a little bit about not just my experience, but the whole process of stretching. Why do we need to be stretched? Why should we submit to that process? What is it producing in us? Well, the word stretch means to extend, to enlarge, and it usually occurs by opposing forces. Now, when I read that definition, I don't know why, maybe because I'm hungry, but immediately I thought about pasta. And if you've ever watched, like if you watch the Food Network or the Cooking Channel or whatever, or you cook yourself, you know that when you're making homemade pasta, once you combine all the ingredients, it's fairly simple to make, from what I could see. But the process of preparing the dough before it's cooked is the stretching process, and you actually run it through a device that's actually slowly pulling it and thinning it out. So when I read that definition, I thought about pasta. I thought about that process, and I thought, oh wow, that opposing force is causing the structure of the pasta to change. So stretching brings about change. It brings about a change in us that we didn't know was there. So it brings about abilities or awareness of things about ourselves that we don't know. You know how they say you never know what you're going to be like under pressure until you're under pressure. You don't know what's in you until it comes out. The stretching process does that. So I'm jumping a little bit ahead of myself, but that's what I thought about when I thought about the word stretching. Focus is so important, especially when you're going through the stretching process, because there is going to always be an underlining temptation in our emotions to run in the opposite direction. You need to know why you're being stretched. You need to know the benefits of being stretched so that you can endure it, so that you don't stop the process and run the other way, because there are benefits to being stretched. For example, let's just look at it from a natural standpoint. If you're working out, if you're getting ready to do a strenuous physical workout, experts tell you you have to warm up your muscles, because if you don't warm up those muscles, you're going to have an injury. You're going to strain your muscle, and straining is different from stretching. Straining means that you have caused the muscle, or you've caused injury. Stretching has not caused injury if it's done properly. Now, if you're stretching wrong, you can strain a muscle. But the whole point of stretching before you exercise is to warm up those muscles so that when you start to use them in that physical activity that you're doing, you don't strain them, you don't tear them, you don't have any sort of injury. So that's why stretching is important before you start to work out. Even singers, before they sing, they stretch their vocal cords. They go through vocal exercises to stretch. One, because they need to make sure they don't injure their vocal cords. And also, when the vocal cords are stretched, then you're able to sing stronger, you're able to sing with more force, and you can reach higher notes. You see where I'm going with this? So there are benefits to stretching. It is a process that produces enlargement and extension, but it's done through opposing forces, because your emotions are saying, I don't want to do this. But then inwardly, you're like, this is the right thing to do. I need to do this, or this is something God is requiring me to do. Some people have shared that they've gone through seasons where God has required them to scale back. And that that was stretching, because by them submitting to God in that season and pulling back and cutting things off or moving on or doing various things that God is asking us to do that we may or may not have expected to do, that is stretching, because God is making us. He's developing our character, so that when we get to where we're going, or we get to where he wants us to be, we have the character to sustain it and we don't implode or explode. Okay, you've ever seen movie stars that have catapulted to fame, or not even movie stars, models, singers, anyone in the public eye, or that has public access. They've been catapulted very quickly, or they rose to fame, but they weren't prepared, or they weren't being prepared. And sometimes you see that self-destructive, self-sabotage behavior going on. They're imploding. They're imploding. They're exploding inwardly because of the outward external pressure, because they have not been stretched and they can't handle it. Or the real them, comes out and they explode, and they're destructive and they hurt people and they do mean, vicious things to people, because again, they can't handle what they now have in front of them. And so stretching is important in that regard as well. So again, stretching means to extend or to enlarge by an opposing force without injury. Now, the injury occurs when we fight and we resist. The Bible says that he gives grace to the humble. So we have to be humble in these processes. The 3 benefits that I want to talk about for stretching is flexibility. So when you're stretched, or when you go through the process of being stretched. So I'm speaking about the word stretch as a noun. So we're talking about the process of being stretched, or the state of being stretched. It produces flexibility. So you have the ability to adapt. And that's really important, especially as you move forward and move upward in life, because every new level or every new territory requires you to change. So flexibility is important. Not to become a negative person or in a bad way, but to become a better version of yourself. The second benefit of stretching is it brings resilience. And that is really important, because life is going to happen to you regardless. It's going to happen to you. Things are going to occur, things that are out of your control, because we're all connected in this world. We are all connected. And so even if our life is well, we may be connected to individuals that are near and dear to us who are dealing with things. So life is going to happen. So being stretched brings about resilience, meaning you have the ability to recover quickly. You can recover quickly. That is also very important. And then the third thing that stretching does for you, which I'll talk about, is it brings a new level of freedom, because the type of stretching I'm talking about, which is emotional and spiritual and with your character, it starts to challenge your existing beliefs. It starts to challenge your existing mindset. And so when you break free from that through the stretching process, you experience a new level of freedom. We're going to talk about 3 benefits of stretching: flexibility, resilience, and freedom. So stay with me, guys. Stay with me. When you understand the benefit or the purpose of something, it gives you the ability to endure even when it gets hard. The Bible says that a strong spirit will sustain a man. That strong spirit comes from who you're connected to, what you're connected to, what you're feeding yourself, what you're feeding your spirit, and it also comes from what you know. So I already know that stretching is good for me. I'm less likely to submit or give in to the temptation to resist it and fight it every step of the way. And I'm more likely to submit and yield quickly, because 1, I want to hurry up and get through this process, and 2, I understand that it's for my good. So when you get that, that's why I want to share the benefits, because if you understand that, then it kind of gives you the wherewithal to press in deep. Now, part of the process of being stretched, or the state of being stretched, is the pruning process. The pruning process. So coming from this from a biblical standpoint, from a spiritual standpoint as a Christian, so I'm going to invite you to go to John 15, chapters 1 through, I think, 4, verses 1 through 4. So John 15, verses 1 through 4, where Jesus is talking about how he is the vine, we are the branches, and that if we want to do anything that is of substance, if we want to do anything that is eternal, has eternal weight, if we want to do anything that is kingdom oriented, we must be connected to the King. That makes sense, right? And so through our connection as a branch to the vine, there will come a time where we'll need pruning. Now, pruning means that we're cutting off or removing anything that is undesirable or unnecessary. So let's look at it this way. So if I'm the branch, right, and I'm connected to the vine, and there's parts of me that are diseased, please listen. There are parts of me that are hurt. If there are parts of me that are wounded, if there are parts of me that are damaged, and these areas are going to stop me from being productive according to God's will for my life, and in direct connection to me being a blessing to others, God will remove it. He will remove it. So sometimes you get healed of things, right? But sometimes you get delivered from them. It just depends on what's going on, the situation, what's going on with you, what you're ready to deal with, what God needs to deal with. It varies on the person, the situation, but pruning removes those things that are diseased or dying, because diseased parts of a plant will become a toxin to infiltrate the entire plant. And so things have to be cut off aggressively when they're dead, dying, or diseased. That's not the time to be gentle or cute. That's the time to just lay the axe to the root and cut it off. Some things, some relationships, some thought processes, some things in our lives we can't even play around with. We can't pity pat it. We got to say, okay, this is toxic, this is deadly, and it's going to kill me. It's going to lead to spiritual death, emotional death. It's going to lead to maybe physical death. I can't play around with this. I can't be concerned about feelings. I have to cut this off quickly and immediately. Now, also, pruning also removes those things that are unnecessary, because sometimes we have, how can I describe it? Sometimes we have too much. And so, have you ever seen, I'll give you an example. Have you ever seen in school, if you remember, like if you're in science class and the teacher wants to show you how to create another plant from an existing plant, they would cut off a piece of the plant, like a leaf or a stem, and then they would stick it in water, and they would wait until that piece started to sprout roots, and then they would transfer that piece into soil, and it would then create a whole new plant. So it wasn't that that piece was bad or diseased or dying or toxic. It was that God needed to plant it somewhere else. So sometimes you may be in relationships. Please hear me by the Spirit. Sometimes you may be in relationships that are not bad. They're not toxic. They're not ungodly. But God has need of them or you somewhere else. And so he removes that. He prunes that so that both can be productive as individual entities or plants. Please understand that. So there are times where you need to just cut it, keep moving, don't look back. And then there are times where pruning is necessary for growth and expansion. So it just, again, it depends on where you are in your life, what God sees in you, where God is taking you in this season, and what is his end game in that particular arena of your life. So I want to just explain those two things, undesirable and unnecessary. when you're being pruned and or a plant is being pruned and something is removed from you that is either undesirable or unnecessary or is harmful, what happens is you reduce in size. So it might look like in the beginning it's a loss. You might think, oh wow, I had all of this stuff going on and now I'm down to here. God, what you doing? I don't understand here. And you're being reduced for a season. Again, understanding why you're being stretched, understanding the purpose of being stretched will help you endure the pruning process, because you know, okay, this is taking me somewhere. I'm not going to be here always. I'm not going to feel like this always. Things are not going to sound like this always. I'm going somewhere, so I trust the process. I trust God in the process. So again, you might get reduced. I remember step back from a lot of things, a lot of good things. And looking back on it now, I understand why I had to, because God was expanding me. He needed to remove a portion of the plant, plant it somewhere else so that it could grow and be productive alongside of the existing plant. I hope this is making sense. And so I remember though, initially, I was like, I don't understand. I just don't feel like I need to be doing this anymore, but I don't know why, because on the surface, it all looks great. I'm getting positive feedback from people. I don't sense anything crazy. But I don't get it. I don't understand what's going on. But again, now that I'm where I'm at today, it all made sense because God was trying to extend and enlarge me. And so for a season, I had to be reduced in what I was doing so that I could be pruned, so that pieces could be then planted other places, and then those pieces could develop and flourish in their respective areas, which caused increase, enlargement, and extension. Again, the definition of stretching is to extend and to enlarge by opposing forces without injury. So that was something that I had to go through, and we all go through it. But I think the difference is people that come through it successfully understand why they're going through it, and they press in spite of how they're feeling. And so for a time, it may seem like you're being reduced, but really what God is trying to do is he's trying to maintain the integrity of what he has called you to do. He's trying to maintain the integrity of your purpose. He's trying to maintain the integrity of your character. And so there will be times where you have to be pruned for that reason as well. So there's many reasons why we're stretched. There's many reasons why we're pruned. They're not all bad reasons. The end result of being stretched, the end result of being pruned is always going to be better, greater, more. Don't forget that. When that happens, it creates enormous discomfort and distress to our emotions, especially if we don't understand what's going on. Now, if we do, we're able to navigate those feelings with success. But if we don't, it's like, what is going on? My entire apple cart has just been turned upside down for no apparent reason. What is it? Why, God, why are you asking me to do these things? I don't get it. Or why are these doors being closed to me? That's also something that happens when you're stretched. Why are opportunities that were once open being closed? Why did I have favor with this or that, and now I don't have favor? Why is it that relationships are distancing? Why is this happening? I don't understand. So again, the stretching process, the pruning process. So in that, we become very uncomfortable, right? Our emotions are all over the place. We're trying to figure out what's going on. We're trying to make sense of it in the moment. And so in that whole emotional upheaval, then what happens is that creates the opposing force, because then we're thinking, okay, I'm out of here. I'm out of here. I don't have to deal with this. This is crazy. This makes no sense. I'm done. That's where you have to fight. The spirit man and the flesh are warring, because something in you is saying, no, this is something that has to happen. This is something that has to occur. I just know it is. But emotionally, I don't want this to happen. So that's where those opposing forces step in and really exhibit themselves. And that's really when your character and your integrity are tested. How do you respond when you're under pressure? How do you act? how do you respond when things don't go your way? I talk about that. I have a YouTube teaching about how do you act when you're under pressure. What is the purpose of the pressure? So guys, I'm going to end this. And tomorrow we're going to jump into looking at the benefits of being stretched. We're going to start with flexibility. We're going to then go to resilience, and then we're going to go to freedom. Many people are in a process of pruning and stretching, and they don't know what's going on. And I know this is going to help them manage that and get through it with success.